What's up? Greetings, Earthlings. Today I make a cool intro. So today is day 2 of I'm Soy. I have a technology and phone social media addiction, and I'm using myself as a case study to be able to understand how addiction works in the human brain and how it works in my life personally, and how I can take steps to create a harmonious relationship with something that isn't going away, technology and social media, and something that is ingrained into our lives. I want to take my brain back, and I want to understand what's happening in my brain and why it's so easy for companies, big tech, phones to control my brain, and why I have such little understanding of how to control my own brain. So today we're going to start with just a quick overview of parameters. So I again have my flip phone that I share with family and haven't really shared it with any friends yet, but during the day I use this flip phone in case I need to contact somebody or my family needs to contact me. I have an iPhone. iPhone gets turned off during the day. I don't use it. I'm allotting myself 1 hour of social media usage so that I can document and post onto YouTube, and so that I can go into my social media and be able to record how I react to it, how I feel about it. So today I actually am off from work for a week or so. So I have been in the library just researching, reading psychology books, reading addiction books, and understanding how addiction works in the human brain. So how did my day go today? I woke up okay. I made my 1 hour last night to post my video, but I did it at night. And I subsequently was unable to sleep. And I went to bed around 12. I couldn't fall asleep until I went to bed around 11 something, couldn't fall asleep until around 12 something. So today I'm going to do my 1 hour of social media earlier. So that's one thing we've learned, is we already knew this, but screens significantly affect our ability to sleep. That's because screens are so bright. They're made to mimic the sun. The blue light from the screens interferes with your sleep patterns, because it interferes with your natural circadian rhythm, because it makes your brain think that it's daytime when it's nighttime, because you're staring at a screen. You try to go to sleep and it's significantly harder, and I'm sure there's other things happening in the brain there. So that happened last night. Today I woke up and I didn't experience the initial need and desire to go on my phone that I did yesterday upon waking up. However, today I had at least 10 instances of moments when I wanted to reach for my phone, and I felt kind of anxiety behind not being able to check my phone. Other than that, I have not been on my phone today. I'm going to check my screen time. I'm excited about it because it is at 17 minutes, party people. 17 minutes of screen time today. And I'm happy about that because I spent the day at the library reading and learning. So that's pretty much how today is going for me. So I did have instances of withdrawal today. I did not relapse, and I had a lot of temptation because I am a speech therapist, so I was on the computer looking for stuff for my client. I had one client today, and I wanted to go on Instagram and Facebook so bad. Oh my God. As I'm used to just typing it in and forgetting it and just going and whatever. Okay, so what did I learn today? Today we're going to be talking about dopamine, and I know everybody knows dopamine, but do we really understand how and why dopamine is so instrumental in our dependence and addictions? So we're going to first talk about what dopamine is. So dopamine is a neurotransmitter in the brain, and it is primarily responsible for pleasure. And the pleasure pathway is how and where addiction kind of takes place, begins, and lives. So I just want to go through my notes really quick. So we're going to go ahead. So the pleasure pathway, right? This is where pretty much it's a chain, right? This is where pretty much addiction happens here, right? So when dopamine is being transferred from one neuron to the other, and it's going to get reabsorbed into the brain, something can happen. So when you're on your phone, basically it functions similar to gambling, whereas something that you see something you want, or when you're on your phone, your brain gets triggered, right? Because you see something you want, you get stimulated, and so that releases a spike in dopamine. When you hear your notifications, when you see something funny, right, you spike in dopamine. So your brain sends out a whole bunch of dopamine, right? And so what happens in addictions is that all types of substances of addictions, we're going to talk about phone use and technology use as a substance, right? Because it's something that we're using. It interferes with the normal reabsorption. So once something is produced by the brain, the normal reabsorption and pattern of sending it back into the brain. So what happens in addiction is that it prevents and blocks reabsorption of high levels of dopamine, and they remain in synaptic gaps between the brain, which is where it's usually absorbed through. So they just kind of are chilling in the synaptic gaps. So when that happens and they don't get reabsorbed, that's what causes the high, and that's what makes you feel high and makes you feel like feelings of euphoria when you're on your phone and you're like, yes, connection, relatedness, I'm not alone, funny. But then after a while, that contributes to a lack and low dopamine in your brain, right? And so low dopamine in the brain, and it's just very funny, low dopamine in the brain causes depression, anxiety, lack of motivation, difficulty concentrating and focusing, sleep disturbances, insomnia, tremors, GI issues, low sex drive. So what is and again, we can accept that correlation does not imply causation, but when there is such a high correlation between the fact that there are more people spending time on devices that increase amounts of dopamine, right? So you produce all of this dopamine, right? But it never gets reabsorbed into your brain, and now your brain is low on dopamine. And so now your brain is low on dopamine, and now you feel depressed and anxious. How many people in our society and in our world right now are depressed and anxious? And how many people spend hours and hours of days on hours and hours on their phones, of their day on their phones? You know what I mean? So that's what we're talking about today. So basically it's like you spike dopamine and then you crash, and then you're depressed and you're anxious and you're sad because you don't have dopamine in your brain anymore. So what's happening to me today, I experienced anxiety. I experienced a lack of motivation. Remember yesterday I couldn't get out of bed? Difficulty concentrating, difficulty focusing. Absolutely. I couldn't focus on one task because I just wanted to get on my phone because I needed dopamine, right? And dopamine has apparently become my phone has become my main way of getting dopamine. So how can we naturally increase dopamine in our brains? Exercising, right? But really we can go on a walk. We can go outside. There's at least one study that shows that there's an increase in dopamine receptors through sunshine exposure, through being outside, right? We can make art, we can draw, we can write, we can interact with ourselves. No junk food. Try to avoid alcohol, avoid drugs. Healthy diet, leafy greens, avocados, peanuts, oats, watermelons, and olive oil have high levels of something called tyrosine, which will also aid in production of dopamine. Let's make sure we're covering all our bases. So basically, what we're talking about and realizing is that we who have identified as having an addiction or a dependence on our devices are engaging in something just like a drug that produces high levels of dopamine and then has us crash, and then doesn't allow us to reabsorb the dopamine that's been produced into our brains, leaving the dopamine hanging in the synaptic gaps, which creates the feeling of euphoria and being high. That's why you want more dopamine, because you want to feel that again, right? And we can't reabsorb it. So now all this dopamine is out of our brains, and we produce all of this, and now we have none in our brains. And so now we feel depressed and anxious because we have low levels of dopamine. So then, really quick, the last thing we're going to talk about today, and then tomorrow we're going to discuss classical conditioning, which is going to be very interesting, and how we can use how we've been conditioned using Pavlov's classical conditioning in our phones, and how we can use that same conditioning to break our condition and to unlearn the conditioned response. So one last thing that we want to talk about is, if you're watching this, it's day 2. So we want to just really quick, how do we know when we've crossed the line from being technologically dependent, or being like, I love tech, I'm a tech guy, tech girl, tech person, to an addiction? So when someone is incapable of managing your time on your computer or your phone, when you have feelings of euphoria while using your device, you begin to lie to people about the time you spend on technology, abandon real life hobbies, social interactions, and productive pursuits to spend more time with your technology. You develop health issues related to it, such as poor personal hygiene, trouble sleeping, weight gain, eye strain, dry eyes, becoming irritable when somebody is interrupting you while you're on your phone, feeling guilty or shameful for being on your phone instead of spending time with family or friends, trying to cut down on use but repeatedly failing, and craving more time with the device or the substance, and you become irritated when you are denied that. I exhibit incapable of managing time, feeling of euphoria, lying to people about time spent, abandoning real life hobbies. I become irritable when you interrupt me while I'm watching TV, while I'm on my phone. Please do not talk to me. Yeah, it's bad. Guilt of shame about the time spent. Yes. Trying to cut down on use but repeatedly failing. Absolutely. And craving more time with the substance and being denied. I'm being upset when I'm denied. So sometimes I'd be talking to somebody, I'm like, I want to be on my phone right now, stop talking to me. And I get upset with them and I'm like, stop talking, because I want to be on my phone. So that's today. Today we kind of just discussed what dopamine is, how dopamine affects our brain, how our phones affect our production of dopamine, and then how after we've produced a whole bunch of dopamine, then we have no more in our brain because addiction-like tendencies interrupt the pleasure pathway and don't allow us to reabsorb the dopamine back into our brains, which then causes a deficiency and leaves us feeling depressed and anxious. And tomorrow we're going to discuss classical conditioning. We'll also discuss the book How to Break Up with Your Phone, and we'll start to implement some of those things. So for now, if you're gonna follow along with me and do this with me, go ahead and start to build a consciousness of how much time you're spending. Check out your average times, go in and click on it, and then it'll show you how much, if you have an iPhone. If not, you have to download an app, I believe. It'll show you how much time you spend every day, and work on asking yourself, are you cool with that? Are you cool with spending 8 hours of your day on your phone? And if you're not, then start to build a consciousness about that. And whenever you are on your phone, try to really limit that time. And I know it's really difficult, and I really just want to get into what I'm talking about tomorrow, but tomorrow we're going to talk about how to do that. Peace and lots of love to you, and I'll see you tomorrow for day 3 of our little experiment.